Today I was thinking about health anxiety, which is something I suffered from for a while, a couple of years ago. And I thought about it because I felt like weird sensations in my body, and I was just so pleasantly surprised to find that I really don't go into like panic mode anymore, and that I don't catastrophize or think of the worst case scenario because of something that's going on in my body that I don't recognize. That was health anxiety for me before. I would feel certain things, or I would get strange symptoms, and I would immediately jump to the worst possibility. Like my brain would get obsessed with it, and I would Google. And of course, Google kind of amplifies the anxiety you already have. It's supposed to, like, when you Google a symptom, you're trying to find answers, but when you're already very anxious, you actually simply become more anxious. So the main thing that I learned, the most important thing I learned, was to not Google and to not seek reassurance, which is, of course, way easier said than done. I struggled with this for a very long time. Well, I mean, it was actually not that long. I struggled with that for like a couple of months, but it was a very intense struggle. So what happened with me was that I was going through a very hard time at my job, and I was very, very stressed out. I had insomnia, and basically all joy was gone from my life. I was just surviving and existing in order to go to work, in order to be able to pay my bills, in order to be able to survive and go to work. And this led to, I was so stressed and so anxious and so sleep deprived that I started developing weird symptoms that at first seemed neurological. And I had never been a health anxiety sufferer. Some people call this hypochondria as well. I think it's kind of a problematic term nowadays. I don't know. But I had never really suffered from that before. I've always been very healthy. I'm not someone who gets sick frequently, and I don't really have any conditions, thankfully. So this was very strange, and I was very, very scared of having like an incurable degenerative disease. And because I was so stressed out at work and I was feeling so anxious and I wasn't sleeping, the anxiety got even worse. And that made the symptoms be even worse. I would get what's called paresthesia. So it started in my tongue. I would get randomly my tongue would start tingling, or it would fall asleep. And later I was so stressed and so scared that I would get numbness in my limbs, in my face, weird tingling sensations that were very distracting, right? So I wasn't really able to work, to focus. I was really just focusing on these symptoms. And basically what I learned, that I think is so important, is that, like in my case, what I needed was to learn to sit with the discomfort. That's basically it. That's basically what helped me, and I dare to say it cured me. I needed to accept that I was being anxious, that the anxiety was asking me for reassurance, but that I needed to ignore that demand of the anxiety. So seeking reassurance feels really good in the moment. You perhaps nowadays you can go on like a chatbot, and the AI can it can seem that it's having like a dialogue with you. When I went through this was in 2022, so ChatGPT wasn't really a thing yet, I think. So I would seek reassurance by going on Google and on Reddit and just trying to find people who would describe my symptoms and then just tell me, oh, it's not a disease. Maybe you have like a magnesium deficiency or you're low on vitamin B12. So that reassurance would come, or the results would tell me you have MS or you have, like it was mostly neurological diseases that popped up. And so, like in the long term, the thing is that anxiety, this anxiety, any anxiety really, or anything that is kind of forcing you to go on a bit of an obsession and compulsively seek reassurance or find answers. Like this mechanism, in my case, in my brain, every time it would reclaim more and more attention and reassurance. So at first I would Google, find an answer, feel a little bit better in the moment, but then like seriously, like 15 minutes later, I would need to Google again. And the anxiety kept on getting higher and higher. And that's untenable, right? Because you're never really done easing the anxiety. And something that also didn't work was like fighting the anxiety. So I was in therapy, of course, when I realized this was becoming a problem. And my therapist really helped me. And at first, when she kind of, she gave me certain strategies that I don't think it's very responsible to share here, because you need to be accompanied by a professional. But anyways, while kind of implementing these strategies, I thought, okay, I just need to resist the urge to Google, or use my willpower and not Google and not look for explanations to what's happening to me, or like anything that's gonna make me like convince me that I am not dying. Oh, the cat's moving around. So I need to not Google. I need to stop going, because I also wanted to like go to the doctor all the time and like get tests that would like prove that I didn't have anything, even though I already did initial tests that confirmed that there was nothing wrong. But resistance is just another form of attention. So urging the thing to go away and wanting the thing to go away, resisting it, not wanting it to be there, is just another way of giving it attention. So if you're in distress and you're resisting it, just the resistance represents more distress, right? Because I feel so bad about this thing and I want it to be gone, and then it's not gone, because it's like it's paradoxical, right? And it's also like just the typical example of, if I tell you not to think of a blue elephant, well, that's exactly what you're going to think about, right? You're going to think of the elephant. So resisting that anxiety only leads to more anxiety. So that's what I learned. I learned not to Google, and I learned to kind of shift my view of the situation and just sit with the anxiety. That's like my only advice when I don't know, why am I giving advice again? That's like my only lesson, like my main lesson, really. We need to learn to sit with not knowing and with the distress and with the anxiety, because that signals to our nervous system that nothing's wrong, that it can calm down. But if you're actively feeding the thing by searching for answers, or by like urging yourself to not think about it, or forcing yourself not to think about it, it's not going to work. So you're signaling to your nervous system that something's wrong, something undesirable is going on. So yeah, that's what I learned. And it's not an easy thing. It is very, very, very hard. I struggled with it for weeks initially, and then something in me clicked, and I treated it as an experiment. And I just thought, I just want to see what happens. Like, I'm gonna give this a chance. What can happen if I just sit with the uncomfortable feeling? Give it 10 minutes, and then give it 15 minutes. And that curiosity of like wanting to see what happens actually led me to proving to myself and to my body and to my brain that nothing was going on. And like the urge to Google and the fear of having something horrible actually decreased. And so I got better like after a couple of months. I went into a very intensive therapy because my symptoms were really like ruining my life, really. The anxiety was ruining my life, and I was going through burnout, but I didn't know it at the time. So I was simply burning out at work. And I think that the fear that the symptoms brought kind of distracted me from what was actually going on, which was that I was very unhappy at my work, and that my nervous system was just begging me to leave that place. So yeah, I guess my lesson with health anxiety that I kind of thought a lot about today was I needed to learn to sit with uncertainty and not look for certainty, and not look for things to be perfect, and not like force myself to forget about the anxiety that I was feeling. My neighbors are so loud, and I mean, I'm only recording this on my phone, but I think the mic's gonna pick up every movement my neighbors are making. It's what you get when you move to an old, beautiful but very old city in Europe. Something else that I learned, this same lesson kind of helped me with other things that caused anxiety. For instance, at around the same time, I was getting really anxious about air travel. I had never been anxious about that, but I started fearing air travel, and I started getting really anxious when my family or friends had to get on planes. And I would track their planes with one of those like online trackers. You can just put in the flight number and then you can track at what time the flight took off, where it is at the moment, the speed, the altitude. It's really crazy. I mean, it's a great tool, but I would get obsessed with this. And sometimes people were like flying across the Atlantic, and it was like, I don't know, 8-9 hour flight, and I would just track it. Every 5 minutes I would open the website and track the plane. And then I just challenged myself to sit with the discomfort of not knowing anything about where the plane was or at what time exactly it had taken off. And it was amazing. Like, the first half an hour was horrible, and then a couple hours later I relaxed and forgot about it. And that's great, because anxiety in general, when you're very anxious and you start getting obsessive thoughts, the anxiety kind of tells you to withdraw, or makes you withdraw from your life, from being present, be it by making you obsess about every single tingly sensation you can have on your body, or, you know, your friend's flight across the Atlantic. And I just kind of got to this moment where I thought, I need to give my whole attention to the things that actually matter in life. How do I want my life to be? Like, what's the state of my mind that I want for myself every day? And of course, I'm saying this as if I'm not perfect, and of course this doesn't work perfectly every time, but the few times that I'm lately kind of like tempted to give in to anxiety and worry, just actively just worry, I think, no, this instant is it's all I have. That's my life. How do I want to live this instant of my life? Worry doesn't help anything. Googling compulsively the same thing about the same symptoms over and over and over doesn't do anything. It actually makes it worse. Tracking a flight for 9 hours doesn't really give you control over the flight, but it does ruin 9 hours of your day. So yeah, I after I was better and I wasn't getting any more like weird symptoms, because of course, once I stopped obsessing about the symptoms, and I eventually left my job and got better, and my stress was reduced, the symptoms went away. So that's kind of like that's what kind of proved to me that these symptoms were like, they were real, but they had no like biological or physiological origin. They weren't biological, let's say, quote unquote. They weren't imaginary, but they were what some people call, I think, psychosomatic, meaning that they were being caused not because something in my body was like physically wrong, but because my stress was damaging my body in that sense. I guess that also means it is like a physical. But I didn't have a condition, like a physical, biological condition. I had stress that was creating these like symptoms. Anyways, so yeah, happy results. The anxiety kind of subsided as well as the symptoms. And my daily life became my priority. It was more important because I actually read this book, A Body Made of Glass, by Caroline Crampton. I think it's her last name. She's a British author, and it's a great book about health anxiety and hypochondria and melancholy, which is like, it's actually a very interesting book because she talks about Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy, which is a book written in the 1600s about this notion of melancholy, which was like a disease of the nerves. Anyways, well, that's maybe another subject, but the author, this Caroline Crampton, she kind of explores the origin of this idea of melancholy and the origin of the idea of hypochondria, of people who have like imaginary diseases. And she links that really nicely with her own experience of health anxiety. She had health issues that she hadn't been aware of when she was young, and then, she didn't really notice the symptoms until it was a bit late, or until the thing had advanced a lot. And she was cured, but she developed health anxiety and started like being very worried about, what if this little twitching in my leg means I'm sick with cancer? What if this little weird new thing that my body is doing is another symptom that I shouldn't ignore? So she explores that. And the book really helped me because it's not kind of like a definite thing. She's not like saying, this is how I got cured. She's really saying, I remember this quote. She says, no knowledge of the body is final, which is kind of liberating when you really integrate it and understand it. There's no way to know that you are completely healthy. Of course, it counts like how you're feeling, and if you treat your body properly, and if you take care of yourself, your energy levels, your sleep. But you don't really know, and there's no way to know. And you should be, we should. It's best if we accept that. So no knowledge of the body is final. And she also said, what I was talking about before, about anxiety, like when anxiety is like urging you to problem solve and like find solutions, get tests. Sometimes you even feel that you know more than your doctor because you saw something on Google or on the internet. You are ruining your life in the sense that you are ruining the present for the fear, I think she said, for the fear of what the future might bring. I think we all do that on different levels. We worry so much about what might happen in the future that we ruin the present. We're so afraid of ruining the future, or of the future being ruined, that we don't realize that we are ruining the present. And that happens a lot with anxiety and with these fears that lead us to behave a bit compulsively. which was my case. I was Googling nonstop, Googling the same thing over and over, trying to find like different answers. It was really debilitating, and I kept this hidden from my partner and, of course, my co-workers, and I was really suffering in silence. But fortunately, something clicked in me, and I thought, I need help. This is normal. I would like get up at 4 a.m. if I was sleeping at all, and like feel a little tingling in my face, and I would just go to the other room and start Googling like crazy and just clicking on everything and like reading every Wikipedia entry for every neurological disease that started with nerve, like weird sensations in your skin and your muscles. But the thing is that in my case, thankfully, it all had like an origin in the stress. Stress was giving me symptoms that were stressing me more and were getting aggravated because of the stress. So it was like this horrible, vicious cycle. Yeah, so I'm better now, and I guess for my future self, I need to remember that sitting with discomfort is really the best way of getting rid of it, not wishing it away, not resisting it. And reassurance seeking is actually a trap, because you end up setting the bar even higher every time. So you get a bit of reassurance, and then next time you're going to need more and more and more, and it just never ends. So that's something that needs to be like cut at the root. Hopefully, with the help of a therapist. I was lucky enough to find a therapist that worked that really quickly with like a very intensive method, I guess, of therapy, like a style of therapy that really in the first month helped my anxiety go from 100% to I'd say 25%. So that was really amazing. She worked a type of therapy that is good for these things that are like very acute. It's not the type of therapy that I recommend for other things, or that I think would help me with other things. More like deep-rooted anxiety, social anxiety, perfectionism, things like that. But with things that are very acute, it really helps. I think it's called, I don't know how to translate it, but it's a style of therapy developed by an Italian psychologist called Giorgio Nardone. It's like brief strategical therapy, something like that. And these conclusions I arrived at thanks to these therapies, but also thanks to a coach and therapist actually that I found online. Her content was really helpful. I felt way less alone, and that also really helped me. Her name is Sherelle. She has a channel on YouTube called Sherelle Thinks. And then reading Caroline Crampton's A Body Made of Glass, and Sidi Husvet's The Shaking Woman, or A History of My Nerves. History of My Nerves. well, the shaking woman. Yeah, so those were good tools. Right. Bye.